This is me going to the Capitol to interview some state representatives on the school funding issue.
Yep.
Okay.
What are the biggest challenges facing Texas schools in terms of funding right now?
Unfortunately, the entire Texas public school system is hanging over the cliff. This is not even, we're near the edge, but we've gone over the edge and the school districts are hanging on by their fingernails. And if we don't restore their funding and don't give them funding that takes care of inflation, all this stuff, schools are going to start closing around the state.
Yeah. How can we help these challenges?
It's going to be the people. It's going to be people back home. It's going to be our neighborhoods, our friends, our families. Those people have to care. The people back home have to be angry, and they have to be upset about the state sitting on the largest surplus in like human history, but yet still being the 44th worst funded school system in the United States. Right? That's a shame. We should be embarrassed about that as Americans.
What should Texas students and families know about the future of our education funding in the state?
That I want people at home to know that the future is in their hands, right? That what happens next, what happens in the next like 50, 60 days, what happens in the next few years, whether we survive or not, is going to be up to them. And whether Americans take their country back and decide that we're tired of this, we're tired of like billionaires just telling us what to do and making the world in their image, and instead of what we actually want, it has to come from us.
Critics of school vouchers argue that they take funding away from public schools. Where do you stand in this situation?
Private school vouchers absolutely 100% take money away from schools. Not if you want to discount what happens to the teacher's retirement system, you want to discount what happens to funding for schools, I think you can just talk about like the money, the billions that are going to go into this. And don't forget, each billion is 1,000 millions. You think about how much money your parents have to, how much they have to work to make that much money, and how many people it takes to produce 1,000 millions. So we're going to take multiple 1,000 millions of your money and give it to people who didn't even ask for it.
Yeah. How will rural schools be affected by school vouchers?
I think rural schools are in the most danger. Already we've seen school districts closing their doors, going from 5 days a week to 4 days a week. I'm not sure they can go down to 3. I'm not sure if there's any point. They might as well just shut their doors. And I'm really scared for them because those communities, those rural communities have been suffering for decades. Even though they've they've been part of the process, they're a very important part of our state. But if you drive around rural Texas, what you will see are empty stores, for sale signs, right? And those communities are dying, and if the schools in those areas go down, it's the end.
Is there anything that we can do to help them?
Encourage them to fight. Encourage everyday people who don't want to be in politics, people who say like, I don't want to deal with that, people who normally just keep their mouth shut about stuff. It's time for them to be fed up. It's time for them to say, this is not right. We have to do better. We can't just let politics run everything. This shouldn't be a Democratic or Republican issue. Like every Texan should demand a well-funded public school system, because the public school system is how we have a middle class, is how we have a world where you can come from nothing and work your way up. Because that access to education is the entry point to the American dream.
Do you think that the $220 increase as allotted by House Bill 2 is enough to meet the rising cost of education?
The amount of money the current budget puts in is nowhere remotely close to even the bare minimum that is needed. And I think while we applaud the idea that we're going to put more money in, this is an insult. Schools are literally saying we need thousands more per student just because of inflation, just because of the massive rise in inflation over the last couple of years. And that's not even taking into account the hyperinflation that is happening right now, right? So even if we give everything that is in HB2 to the schools right now, we still can't say with a straight face that we will promise that no schools will close. They're still going to close, because even what HB2 is putting in is probably not enough. And that's really scary.
Texas has seen teachers shortages in recent years. What measures are being taken to increase teacher pay and retain quality educators?
We've been screaming about this for years. I know Raise Your Hand Texas did a survey of Texas teachers, and this is 3 years ago, saying 75% of Texas teachers are looking for another job right now, right? 75% in Houston. More than a quarter of the teachers right now are uncertified. Unlicensed teachers are teaching children in Harris County. That's going to happen around the state, right?
How does the current budget proposal address the students who require extra academic or mental health support?
It doesn't. It doesn't do it anywhere remotely enough. I think this is, mental health especially, is one of those places where we talk a lot, but we don't actually put our money where our mouth is, if that makes sense.
Yes.
When we talk about, is this a real priority for you? The only thing I care about is, let me see your budget, right? Because you say I care about mental health, but there's no money in the budget for it. Do you really care about mental health? No.
How much do you think we need to raise that amount by?
That's not for me to say. But I say the easy measure is this: if you want to talk about education, Texas should at least be at the national average. We're more than $4,000 per student off from the nation's average. We're not even comparing to states that are doing well, right? There's lots of states. California spends somewhere around $19,000 per student. We spend around 12 or 13, right? That's a big gap. New York spends $29,000 per student, right? And even though costs are more expensive there, but the cost of living is not double, right? So if teachers want better jobs, they're gonna move to other states. They're not moving from district to district in Texas. They're gonna move to another state. And that's gonna be a real problem, because we're not gonna lose our worst teachers first. We're gonna lose our best teachers first.
Is there anything else I need to know?
Well, there's a lot of stuff. And I really want to emphasize this, that what is going to change these conversations, why it matters that you're here, right, is that it is the people back home that will actually make these changes. Because when people demand it, when people are in the streets, when people are calling state reps and state senators every day saying, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Then stuff gets done, right? But until that happens, until people in communities, people who normally don't have any political experience, any desire to touch politics, when they have had enough and they're in the streets or they're in front of their school protesting, that's when things will change.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.